Next, we are going to finish the neckline and armhole edges. I'm going to use a 4mm twin or double needle for stretch fabrics. For an extra neat finish, clip the seam allowance at the seam line, just short of the first row of stitching, and have the seam allowances lie in opposite directions. This does wonders to reducing bulk when seams cross. I am machine basting the neckline 5/8 of an inch turning in place. Later on you may be happy to skip this step and sew the turning from the right side without basting. Doing it this way makes it much easier to sew around the curves and guarantees good results. Try not to stretch as you stitch. If you haven't got a basting stitch on your sewing machine, use the longest stitch and loosen the tension a little. Keep your basting an even distance from the fold. We will be using this as a guide when we sew from the right side. So this is now basted. We are going to stitch either side of the basting using the twin needle. Check your sewing machine manual for twin needle threading. Guide the basting into the centre of the foot. And I finish stitching by overlapping an inch or so, which is enough to stop the stitches coming undone. You can use the useful product fray check or sew in ends if you prefer. The neckline and armholes are stitched, so take out the basting. That's not such a difficult job as the twin needle stitching lies either side, so the basting doesn't get caught up. Tweezers are really useful for this job. Once the basting is removed, trim back the seam allowance to 1 millimetre or so from the stitching. Just slide your scissors along without trying to get too close. You will find that after washing, this edge will look less and less like a raw edge, as the jersey is inclined to roll. So that is the neckline and armholes finished to a very high standard. Now for the legs. I discuss elastic choices in the longer version of this video, but this time I'm using ordinary flesh-coloured elastic that is not specifically made for swimwear, but which hasn't let me down in the past. So this is the one I'm going to use. I find the easiest and neatest way to apply elastic is to machine baste it in place within the seam allowance and at the same time stretching the elastic a little as you go round. This makes top stitching with the twin needles from the right side very easy. So at the sewing machine, and using a basting stitch, place the elastic in position just before the seam line. Fold over the 5/8 of an inch seam allowance take a couple of machine stitches to anchor the elastic. Then fold in the seam allowance and baste, stretching the elastic slightly. You should try and stretch the elastic more around the back of the leg and only very slightly along the leg front. Push the elastic against the fold as you sew. Cut the elastic, leaving a little extra When you get close to the starting point, trim the elastic so that it just overlaps the beginning. Tucking it inside the seam allowance. So for the final stitching, using the twin needle, sew as before. Feeding the basting stitch into the centre of the foot. Start your stitching at the crotch seam. Stretch the elastic as you stitch. As you reach the end, trim your threads. And try and sew exactly over the beginning stitches. All that is left to do now is to remove the basting. The swimming costume is finished and I'm very pleased with it. The basting stages may be a bit of a chore, but the result is worth it. If you wanted to line this costume, use lycra lining. Treat the two layers as one and make in the same way. A racing back version would be a nice addition to my pattern collection. The full-length version of this video for members covers choosing super stretch fabric, selecting the right stitches, deciding on elastic, and many more sewing tips and tricks. Check out my PDF sewing patterns. Join AngelaKane.com for sewing patterns, in-depth videos and ebooks. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. And if you've enjoyed this video, please give it a like. Thank you for watching.